Evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Ellen Gorder, and I'm not here as a policymaker or an expert, but as a mother, a farmer, and someone who grew up with undiagnosed dyslexia. I immigrated to Manitoba as a baby, and like many new families, my parents worked hard just to make ends meet. They trusted the schools would handle literacy, and that if I worked hard and read more, I'd eventually learn to read like everyone else. But I went to school during the rollout of the whole language era, when the philosophy was that children would learn to read naturally by being surrounded by books with little explicit teaching of phonics or decoding skills. Ironically, my parents had grown up in a generation where phonics and sound-based instructions were still part of the reading lessons. But like many working parents, they followed the advice given to everyone at the time: read more at home. So I did. I worked harder and harder, but reading never came easily. Instead, I carried guilt from teachers, from home, and from myself, believing I just wasn't trying hard enough. Growing up undiagnosed, throughout my school years, I felt isolated and ashamed. I watched other students read and write effortlessly, while I stumbled and hid my confusion. No one ever screened me. No one explained that my brain simply processed language differently. That lack of understanding shaped my entire childhood. I wasn't lazy or incapable. I was dyslexic, but the system didn't know how to recognize it, and as a result, I spent years thinking I wasn't smart enough. And by high school, I was struggling deeply with my mental health and self-esteem. Fast forward to today. I'm a mother of two. My daughter thrives in school, but my brilliant young son is dyslexic, just like me. And when he began struggling with reading, I heard the same advice my parents did decades ago: just read more at home. And we did. And from grade 1 to grade 4, I watched my son's confidence and self-esteem slowly crumble. Those should have been the years when a child feels secure, curious, and full of self-worth. And yet, even though I knew how bright and capable he was, creative, thoughtful, and full of potential, the school was slowly damaging that self-worth. He was falling through the cracks of the system. Another child quietly drifting from grade to grade, misunderstood and unseen. Eventually, we paid out of pocket for private assessment and finally received an official diagnosis. That moment was both relief and heartbreak. Relief to understand, and heartbreak that we could have known so much sooner. That diagnosis didn't just change my son's path, it changed mine. Suddenly, my whole childhood made sense. All those years of confusion and self-doubt weren't a reflection of my ability. They were a result of a system that didn't understand how the brain learns to read. I sometimes grieve for my younger self, the child who could have thrived in a different learning environment with teachers who understood. Since then, I've made it my mission to change the trajectory, not just for my son, but for every child in Manitoba. I've immersed myself in the science of reading, the body of research that shows exactly how children learn to read and why structured, evidence-based instruction works. I've met with countless parents who share similar stories, families working multiple jobs, doing everything they can for their kids, but unable to afford private testing or tutoring. There's a clear pattern. Many come from hardworking, lower income backgrounds, and many of these parents themselves struggle with reading. It makes sense. Dyslexia is genetics. But what's heartbreaking is that the system that failed us decades ago is still failing children today. The reality, we are still stuck in the whole language era. Although some school divisions in Manitoba are starting to adopt the science of reading practices, those efforts are still in their infancy. The whole language and so-called balanced literacy approaches remain the norm in many classrooms. Teachers are doing their best, but they are under immense pressure, managing large classes diverse needs, and outdated training that never equipped them with the tools to teach reading based on brain science. It's not the teacher's fault. The system hasn't given them the knowledge or the mandate to change. That's why this bill is so critical. It forces a shift towards data and evidence. And by the time children are finally identified, they've already learned something devastating, that they're not good enough. But that's not true. This isn't a lack of intelligence. The reality is that about 1 in 4 children in every classroom struggle with reading or related learning differences. And when we don't screen, we don't just delay support, we erode confidence and damage self-worth. This isn't only an educational issue, it's an equality issue and a human right issue. Every child in Manitoba has the right to learn to read, and every teacher deserves the tools to make that possible. And why universal screening matters? Bill 225 ensures that every child in Manitoba's public schools is screened early and systematically for learning disabilities, or what I like to call differences. Early detection changes lives. When caught in kindergarten or grade 1, structured literacy and target interventions can close the gap before it grows. Universal screening promotes fairness. Every child, regardless of where they live or what their parents earn, get their fair chance to be seen and supported. Teachers gain clarity. With accurate data and training, they can act early instead of reacting, and families reacting late. It prevents shame and saves resources. Early intervention costs far less emotionally, financially, than years of frustration and remediation. This bill isn't about more bureaucracy or testing for testing's sakes. It's about opening doors and changing outcomes for entire generations of children. We can't keep telling parents to read more when what's missing is early detection and science-based instruction. We can't keep letting kids slip through the cracks because their teachers haven't been given the right tools. And as a parent, and as a dyslexic adult, and as a Manitoban, I'm asking you to pass this bill, because no child should grow up thinking they're broken when they're simply being taught in a way their brain doesn't understand. And when I see my son read now with pride, confidence, and joy, because he works with a reading clinician outside of school hours, I am reminded of what's possible when we understand instead of overlook. But every child deserves that kind of intervention within their school day. Bill 225 will ensure that no child in Manitoba is left behind. And this is our chance to end the cycle and give every child, regardless of background, the fundamental right to read, to learn, and to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Gorder. Any questions? Emily Lamoureux.
I'd like to just begin by thanking you for your presentation here tonight and sharing your personal experience. It's an incredible, vulnerable experience to share, but again, I've said this before, these are the examples that really help ensure that legislation does go through and becomes legislation here in the province. And speaking of your generational story, it is so appreciated. So thank you for sharing. My question, it's a big question. You started to touch on it, but what do you think this legislation would have done for you or for your son if it had been implemented in the schools when you needed it?
Go ahead, Ms. Gorder.
You're asking me if what it would have done if I was screened? I think it would have gave me a sense of understanding of how I learned, and there's no hiding it. There's no confusion, and I think the other presenter touched on it. I think we could, if we use science in the classroom, more kids could learn, and so. Sorry, I'm not very good at answering questions, but that was great. Hopefully
that's great. Thank you, Ms. Gorder. Yeah, Minister Schmidt.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson, and thank you very much for your presentation, for sharing your experience with us and your opinions about Bill 225. And I think I just want to say, first of all, how much I agree with so much of what you said, and that our government agrees about the need for early intervention and the need for early universal screening tools. And that's exactly why our government in April proceeded with a ministerial directive to make sure that school divisions across the province have the mandate from the provincial government to use evidence-based, comprehensive, universal early reading screening tools. because we believe, like you do, that early intervention, that early diagnosis or identification is so vitally important. So perhaps not a question. I just wanted to express, again, my thanks for your presentation and also how much we agree with you. Thank you so much.
Did you want to respond to that, Ms. Gorder?
Yeah, that's great. It can't come soon enough, I think.
Emily Cook.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. I don't have a specific question. I just know you've been here for a couple of hours already, and we appreciate you sharing your story. It helps us do our jobs.
Ms. Gorder?
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, Emily Lamoureux?
I just want to put on record that I think it's important to point out that the release that came out after the legislation had been introduced speaks to some of the information in the legislation, but it does not, in fact, legislate it. So there's no real commitment, there's no follow-up, no accountability to ensure that the school divisions are, in fact, implementing 2 screenings a year. It also does not commit to allowing parents to have the results of what the schools find, and it does not commit to having the school boards come up with ways and resources to then help the students who have been screened. That's why the legislation